Hi there. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the IPVxyZ system that I've talked about in various videos, but not at length in any writing on any of my websites. I haven't gone into detail exactly what the IPVxyZ system is doing and is going to do for you, the general public, or for you, someone who is interested in what I'm doing commercially. Because primarily the IPVxyZ system is a much more diverse IP addressing categorization system that enables many different channels of communications networks to be channeled to one particular IP location. It's not simply about giving someone an IP address and then being able to locate a server or a computer or whatever it may be, a file that you want to access from that particular location. That's all part and parcel of the IP system anyway. We all understand that. No, what the IPVxyZ system will do is it's going to be able to channel a vast array of communications technologies and networks to one particular IP address. This is basically primarily, for my purpose, is going to facilitate a large range of things to do with channeling the commodities and technologies of space TM to the locations in question. But in the general public's networks and things like that, when you yourselves, or you're part of a business that's trying to manufacture a system that can channel and streamline a lot of communications subnets and systems to one particular server or location, from different networks, when we're moving into the escalation period towards the space TM product on the planet, it's going to come part and parcel with that in my remit. And that's why I'm configuring this, so that I'm able to facilitate the service of providing these products and commodities and networks and everything else that's going to streamline it all at the same time to one particular location through a much more complicated IP addressing system. So that is the main purpose of the IPVxyZ system, to supply, if you don't like the word universal commodities, look at it as multifaceted networks and ranges to one particular location. So a much more complex and integral communications system with a diverse range of options to configure, like meeting points or crossroads within the IP addressing ranges. So that's the primary purpose of the IPVxyZ system. Naturally, there are a lot of other things that it's going to be used for. I talked briefly in another video about channeling universal commodities through it, and ultimately mapping out the known universe, the universal zones on the planet, in the whole ethos of what the IPVxyZ infrastructure is going to provide in the Commonwealth, of what we're going to set up around the planet, and the whole network of the communications infrastructure that we'll be providing with that, to start to sort of elaborate on the creative infrastructure that IPVxyZ is already coming up with, and generating the areas outside as safe havens to connect up to that and to receive their sort of bias, if you like, of the universal commodities direct to their location. So ultimately, gradually, we'll be mapping out the universal realms, or the universal zones of the planet, to the configuration of a vast array of universal addresses that can be symbolically linked or identified as particular locations here on Earth. Now, I talked in another video briefly about making contact with Elon Musk. He's interested in my communications infrastructure primarily because what I'm setting up will facilitate, in a much more simple way, a vastly complex array of communications technology that is going to be involved in getting shuttle and craft off-world, ultimately going to Mars and the solar system, and who knows, possibly beyond, who knows, But at this moment in time, it's going to facilitate a vast array of communications technology, streamline it, and enable us to pinpoint, exactly the location where certain craft may be as they orbit Mars or Saturn or wherever it may be. Already we can do this, but it's going to bring in a vast array, or like make each point of location that has an IPVxyZ address. It'll give them a huge bias on configuration to ensure that there's a massive amount of information coming into that craft at one time. Ultimately, bring about the reality of being able to cyber manipulate problems on unmanned shuttle and craft, where you're not actually able to get someone there to fix a problem when something's not working properly. And through this communications network, through purveying the technologies that we're going to be using to improve the situation of craft that are going to be out there for 1 to 20 years or something like that, as they go around Saturn taking photographs. All this equipment is going to be taken care of from here on Earth by purveying through the universal commodities and the IPVxyZ system and the whole network, the whole crossroads point as the IPVxyZ will be. We'll be able to get large teams in to operate on a craft that is having a problem or having engine failure or whatever it may be, and develop a system to ensure that these crafts have a longer life and more sustainability in the whole universal cosmic program of starting to move out and make this world, as Elon says, a multi-planetary species, which I'm a great believer in myself as well. So these are the three core reasons for having the IPVxyZ system. The first one, I'll just recap, is to set up a much more complex networking system using just one IPVxyZ range, which in themselves are quite long and complex. I mean, that's naturally par for the course with subnets and ranges within subnets and ranges within the addresses. But it is possible to map out and configure these addresses to pinpoint locations, and also they will all be static. So these addresses, there's no need to change the IPVxyZ system once it's been set up, and once you have access to that, your network or system will be streamlining whenever you need to channel to one particular location on the planet, say, and to channel as much information as possible through the network without actually putting too much weight or too much too much load on the system that you're accessing through the IPVxyZ system. So what you're actually going to be doing is using the actual communications ether around the system that channels the communications technology and everything that you want to put into that system or access that system using. It'll put that system, what you're putting into the ether, and you'll be able to pinpoint the machine at the prime location of actually putting information onto it, or connecting to it to analyze what's going on that system, or vice versa, or using that system to analyze something that you're connecting to it from, for example. So it's a very complex system. There's a lot of information going through this network, and that's the first reason, therefore, to make it a multifaceted network that can combine a lot of communications technology from many different locations to one location at the same time, taking the burden of accessing a computer or a server from all angles, using the ether in the system that this communications network is channeled through to configure exactly what you want to do on that particular system or server or computer, whatever it may be. And the second reason, like I said, is to map out the known universe onto the location of this planet. That's important for many reasons, especially when we start to get the liquid property of the universal realities coming to this planet. So what we're going to have is, the upscaling, the moving toward the uncapping of the earthly infrastructure as we've reached the level where we've reached a glass ceiling, say, where no longer can we actually build and configure enough things to suit the needs and requirements of our communities and the way we're going as we move to the future of the universal dimension. So the uncapping of the system will ensure that a lot of information, a lot of technology, a lot of creative infrastructure is going to be allowed onto this planet to start to configure the next reality, which is, bringing about the cyber dimensional escalation, if you like, of the reality of what's going on this planet. So the IPVxyZ system will be used to manipulate this reality and turn it into something that is useful and friendly to us, and something that is going to start to move us into becoming the next phase, which is a multi-planet species, if you like, or a species that can start to be a spacefaring civilization that will start to move towards the stars and new realities of populating new worlds and branching out our species as we were always destined to do from the start. So that brings us into the third phase, which I talked about before, which is, using this commodity about the IPVxyZ system, we'll actually be able to channel our assets from the Earth. So if we have to configure infrastructure or make something happen on a system that is off-world, we should be able to do this quite easily through the system without actually having to have bodies on the ground, men on the ground. So this will be, as you can imagine, will be extremely useful for when we're starting to colonize Mars, before we actually, bit the bullet and put people on Mars to start building and creating the colonies that will need to be set up. We'll be able to get machines, robots. We'll be able to start mining for metals and technology or elements, whatever we need to set up things in the system. And before people actually get out there to start to colonize the area, so we'll be able to manage this system much easier through an IPVxyZ system that will start to build up our future, get our feet on the ground, if you like, before we actually get there to locations that are off-world. So that's a brief précis on what the IPVxyZ system. The IPVxyZ systems can be as long as your arm or as short as eight characters, if you like. But what they actually are is, I call them it's called the IPVxyZ system because you've got letters A to Z, lowercase and capital, and then you've got the numbers 1 to 0 to 9, and all those potentials, all the possibilities within a framework of, say, 20 sections, and each section being as long as at least 20 maximum, say, up, but 10, at least 10, if not 20 possibilities. So you've got 20 by 20 potential ranges of all of that, which gives us a far bigger array of what we can actually map out. They are divided by dots in the simplest form. If you're doing a simple address, just one address to an address. When you're trying to configure subnets and ranges, double colons and slashes are also used. Forward slashes are also used to double forward slash or single forward slashes to configure various equivalents in the ranges and that sort of thing. Initially, the ones I'm setting up, the ones I'm using, are for my locality in this network. But as I start to branch out and reach a larger array of things that people are wanting to configure and starting to use a system that I'm helping set up, then I will be on hand to help explain how the decision-making process and how these ranges and networks are set up and how they should look properly when people are setting them up. But that's for the long term. So that's a bit about the IPVxyZ system, and I hope that sheds some light on what I'm actually setting up on my IPVxyZ server and starting to manage through that system. as I work with the people of this community and the rest of the earth. Okay, thanks for your time, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.